Alrighty, guys, all of you. Welcome to lesson 1. So I'm just going to go through, roughly what we'll do in this course, what the expectations of the course are, and all that exciting stuff like that. But basically, well, just a little bit of a full disclosure thing here for you. I'm by no means a serious coder. Up until I started to learn the MQL4 language for creating EAs, I didn't have any coding experience. So that's a good thing and a bad thing, I guess. Good into the fact that it means that if I can do it, you can do it. And bad into the fact that you're learning off someone who's not really an expert. But I sort of learned to code myself simply, or sort of self-taught, self and YouTube university taught, really. There's obviously plenty of places to learn anything you want to learn these days. It's just a matter of narrowing it down to what's worthwhile and what's not. How are you, Ben?
It's muted.
That's all good. You haven't missed anything yet, Ben. I only just started recording and started talking here. But I'm just going to go through exactly how you start doing some coding. We probably won't learn a lot about coding itself tonight. Yeah, Ben's too quick for me. Someone trying to get in. Cheers, Ben. But most people, I assume that everybody that's doing this course are already, know a fair bit about trading themselves. So the good old MT4 platform on the screen is very familiar to everyone, no doubt. But from the MT4 platform, if you come across to this little symbol here, this is what opens up the meta editor platform, which is where you create the code. Get rid of all that crap that I had there. As you can see, I've got lots of little files here from where I was here, Aaron made it on. But anyway, to start creating an EA code, you need to access this meta editor platform, and it's got a few different features. But to open up a new one, you can just click new or go file and new, and you've got all of these different options. So obviously, expert advisor is your fully automated script. Custom indicator. So that's where you can just create an actual indicator that you can put onto a chart, just like any other indicator, really. A script is something that will just run once. Doesn't have a lot of use as far as trading goes, but as parts of other things it does. So you'd load that script onto the chart and it'd run it once, and then it'd no longer be on the chart. If we have a look on the MT4 platform, you'll see you've got the indicators, all familiar with, no doubt. Heaps and heaps of them. And then the next tab is the expert advisors. And then you've also got the script section as well, if you've got any scripts to run. That's where you'll find them in there. Back to the meta editor program though, and that's where you select which ones you want. We'll go through these in more detail as we go along, but the only ones, I've never used Python script. That's a different coding platforms, basically, coding language. You can incorporate that as well. Sort of used if you're bringing in outside code from a different platform. Like if you're, for example, if you're bringing in like accessing a website to bring in information from that to include in your MQL4 coding, you can do that sort of thing. But to start an expert advisor, you just select the one you want and click next, and then you've got to give it a name. Doesn't matter what you call it. Next, next, and finish. And it comes up with a little template. Now I'm just going to quickly go through the various different parts of the of an EA. So up the top section here, these are just all letting the platform know that it is an EA and what it's called and all that. So nothing exciting there. And in here where it says expert initialization functions, it's what it sounds like. You can put in some basic code there. It's where we'd put in various inputs if the user wanted to input code and input parameters into the EA and everything. Like most EAs, you can add a stop loss and take profit. You'd put code in there to do that. If you wanted to give any other variables a starting value, you'd put all that in there. The on init section, that stands for on initialization. So in this section here, you'd put any code that you want to run when it's first loaded onto the chart. So this section will just run once when it first gets loaded onto a chart, and then it won't run anymore. And then you've got another one here for on deinitialization. So if you were to take it off the chart, it's going to run this code once before it kicks itself off. And then down here on the on tick function, this is where the main body of your EA goes. So all the code to place trades and manage trades and do the TA on the chart and all that, this is all going to go in here. And on tick, that's just like what that means is just every tick of information that comes through from the broker. And that can be multiple times a second. That will depend a little bit on latency and exactly how the broker is operating in that. But generally it's every second or more, sometimes a little bit less. And so that this part of the code here is going to be getting run. Well, let's just assume it ticks 1 second. So that would mean that all the code that's between these two brackets is going to be run every single second. One of the things we try to minimize is how long it takes the code to run. And if there was code here that didn't need to run every single second, then that's going to be code that's being run really for no reason. So there's ways of getting around that. Some of that we put in different sections. But that's simply the basic few sections that an EA has. And also, this is where you type in all your code and everything, which I know some of you have probably got a little bit of coding experience and even MQL4 coding experience. But when I started, I didn't, until I watched a few videos, I didn't even have a clue what the meta editor platform was. So I thought I'd better include exactly what that is. Give me a second, I'm having trouble. All right. So another thing I wanted to go through was sort of the expectations of this course. And it's probably going to vary a bit as we go along because I haven't, only not long ago learnt to code these myself. So probably not the expert on teaching it as well, but I can definitely impart some knowledge. And what we'll do is I want to actually create an EA from scratch during the course of the course. But how that EA is, what it does, is going to depend on you guys. I don't want to just type in some code and give you something to copy. We're going to try and put our thinking caps on and come up with some original ideas too, and hopefully create a worthwhile EA while we're doing the course, or at least make a really good start on one, and then you guys learn enough that you can finish it off into a good one after. So what can you do with code and MQL4 code and creating an EA? You can basically do anything, any TA that you could do, any strategy that you've heard of and seen, you can incorporate into the code. I'm not saying I can, because I don't know, the full scope of the coding yet, and I'm still always learning new stuff as well. And some of it's very, very easy once you know a little bit, and some of it's very complicated. Getting an EA just to take out a trade isn't hard at all, but getting it to take it out at the right time, depending on your entry criteria, can be a lot more complicated. And you've sometimes got to think outside of the box to try and make it work. I mean, we're all traders here, so we know, for example, what support is. We know what a trend is, and we sort of know how that relates to when and where we want to place a trade. We know what an RSI is and how that relates to placing trades. We know all those sort of things, but turning that into code so that the code knows what you're talking about and does what you want requires you to think very, very logically and a little bit more mathematically, because it's very easy for us to say, and I'm just trying to come up with something very basic here. If it bounces off support, you want to put in a buy order, and that's the very basics of trading, or one of the basics of trading. But to tell the EA what that is and how to define what support is and what a bounce is and all of that can take a fair bit of thinking and a lot of trial and error with your code. And sometimes even when you're doing some basic code, you get one tiny little thing wrong and it gets confused, doesn't do what you want, or won't even compile. So once you type in some code, we can then also just hit the compile button and it'll run through it and check it for errors. If there are errors, it's going to come back saying there are errors, and that EA won't work at all. You won't even be able to save it with errors, or not save it as an executable file anyway. So that's obviously very handy. You can compile it, see what errors there are, and then try and find out, scroll back to exactly what the error is, and then start to troubleshoot and find out why it isn't working. I'll go through a few places that I got worthwhile information off and to learn to trade from. I'll go through two. One of the first videos I ever watched that helped me make my first pretty dodgy EA was good not because they're probably the best coder in the world or that they were creating complex and amazing EAs, but because they were creating basic code just for one feature and explaining it very basically, which when I was starting, you needed it. It's like coding for dummies, so it was very good. And then I found another guy who obviously has a huge coding background, not just with creating EAs, but other forms of coding as well, because his knowledge is just, way, way above anything that I'm at yet, which you wouldn't want to watch when you're first learning, but once you know a little bit, he's still a lot more advanced than I am, but at least you can see how much you've still got to learn. And he had, between those two and some others, I was able to start working it out. I'm just going to throw this out here too, guys. If we'll try and make this interactive too, guys. So if you've got questions, just speak up.
Ben's got one there in the chat.
Cheers. I was probably going to mention that at some stage. Cost average has got about 900 lines of code at the moment. A few of those are blank lines, but just to separate different lots of code, but that's roughly what it is. And it's Cost Averager is an EA that I created, which was very basic, like 200 lines of code that sort of did the basic functions that I wanted it to. And then I just kept adding features to it, which meant more and more code until it's at where it's at now. All right, so what I was just going to quickly throw out there is that we can create a code that has basically, you can, depending on when you run it, but you can have like a 95, even 100% win rate on the code, on the trades that it takes out. And I know that's a big call and everything, but now everyone's going, why haven't you done that yet then? The reason is that if you make the entry criteria so strict that it basically never loses, you might only get 2 or 3 trades for the year. So that's the drawback. So I think the real trick is finding the balance between a strategy and code to run that strategy that allows a worthwhile number of trades and still reducing the number of losses to something that's acceptable so that you make profit, obviously, which I guess is no different to any other trading strategy, really. I've got some notes here so that I can try and have a semblance of order for this courses. All right, so just quickly, if I was just to do a Google search sort of thing on MQL4 EA code, and just look at videos, and now we're into the good old why am I on Bing? I didn't want to be on Bing. Now my Norton's making me be on Bing for no good reason. So yeah, obviously, like anything you want to Google or YouTube, you'll find an absolute plethora. I just use that word because you don't get to use it too often, of different videos. And obviously, the only real issue with YouTube, doesn't matter what subject you're on, you'll find more than enough videos on it. It's a matter of finding the ones that are worthwhile. And these ones here, which I believe are actually put out by MetaQuotes, is the one that I said is very good for basics, just to explain things. So, like this one, how to code a simple buy trailing stop. So very, very good because it will teach you one little facet of coding. Like this one will teach you how to make a trailing stop. But the drawback of all of these ones is that, like I've watched this video myself, it teaches you how to do a buy trailing stop, but not how to do a sell trailing stop. So you've got to just use your brain a little bit and work that out. And then incorporating that into the rest of your code is another little bit of an issue as well. So it's not just a matter of having a whole heap of their little videos and throw them together. You got to make them cooperate together and everything. So these ones are ones that I would recommend if you haven't done any coding to have a squiz at some stage. And as you can see, they're easy to find because they just got all that big pink heading writing on it. And these ones here called Orchard Forex. That's a guy I said who's an extremely competent coder, and and not just MQL4 coding. There's no doubt he's got to have a lot of coding background, but he explains it very well, even though most of what he's explaining will be, over your head as a beginner, still over my head, a lot of it, but he does explain it well, and with trial and error and rewatching videos and scratching your head and all of that, eventually you'll start to put it together. Now, a lot of when I first started coding, I believe it was one of these videos. I pretty much, he opens up and explains the code as he types it out into meta editor. And I pretty much, well, not pretty much, I did. I just copied whatever code he typed in. I put it in my own meta editor, and that should have been simple, but I kept getting errors and lots of little typos and things just because I simply didn't understand the code at all. But I did that, and I made it work until the code I copied, it worked. And then it was a matter of pulling it apart and changing bits of it to see what it made it do. And I slowly started to learn. So when I first started creating code, sure, I created it and I made it work, but I really didn't have any idea exactly. Well, some of it I understood, but a lot of it I didn't really understand at all why it worked. I knew it worked, and if I changed this bit, it didn't work, but I wasn't quite sure exactly why that was the case. So it was a learning curve. Obviously, now I go through that and I know why. And once you understand this guy and you move on to this guy, and then you sort of start again, he starts talking about code and concepts that I don't quite fully understand either. And you've got to start learning again. So, by no means in 6 weeks are we going to learn everything there is to do with coding. I've sort of been fairly well constantly learning for a year now, and I'm still learning. So, but as long as we can learn enough to grasp the concept, and then, we can further our learning after the course as well. So I'll just go through one more little thing. Two things, actually. AI stuff like chat.ai and all of those things, they are a good source, a good tool to use with coding as well, because you can ask it, to create code that'll place a buy order, and it'll give you code that'll do that. And it's fine for those little things. Once you start wanting it to give you code for more complex things, sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it doesn't. I think a lot of the issue is its knowledge base has previous versions of MQL4 coding knowledge and present versions, and it gets a little bit confused between the two, because it'll give you code that doesn't work, and you can tell it doesn't work, and it'll change the code. The new code doesn't work, and you tell it doesn't, and then it'll go back to the original code. So you get in a loop of something that doesn't work. So very handy tool. I guess AI these days is a go-to tool for a lot of things, but by no means a end all of learning to code. All right, so just quickly, let's come down here to the on-tick function, which is where all the actual code would go if we were creating an EA. And if we wanted the code to place a buy order, we use a code called orders total. Okay, and until I correct the spelling, it was just black writing. But now that it's showing as that purple writing, that denotes the fact that that's an actual code word in MQL4 code. Now, if we highlight that and come up to the help button, click on that and go to MQL4 reference, it's going to tell us all about the orders total code. let me just add a little bit more to it. Just give me a quick second here, guys. I lost what I wanted. I had a couple of little bits of code in my notepad ready to share with you, but my notepad's disappeared. I'll get more organised as I go along, promise. All right. So the order send, if we just copy the order send part, I led you astray before, but order send is how you send an order to the market. And we go to the MQL4 reference and it gives us all the information on it. So back on here, we have order send and then all the information on what we want to send. You know, if we want it to be a buy order, if we want to have a stop loss, if we want any slippage, all of that's going to go in between these brackets. And all of these things here are information that you can put in the bracket. We'll go through this in the next lesson, what string and integer and double means, because that's a major part of the coding. But for the moment, inside the order send brackets, we need to tell it what symbol, you know, so if we want it on Euro USD, that's what symbol means. So we've got to put in which symbol we want it on, or we can just tell it to put it in as the symbol the chart that you have the EA on, which is generally the main thing you do. The operation, so, you know, if we want it to be a buy order, a sell order, a limit order, anything like that. Volume, that's obviously your lot size, what price we want it to go at. So if it was a buy order, you're going to want it at the current ask price. If it's a sell order, you'd want it at the current bid price. If you're doing a limit order, obviously that could be anything. Slippage, so you can have a little bit of slippage in there to allow the market, from the time the EA tells it to place a trade, if the market moves too far before it actually places it, that would be what slippage is. And you can put in a figure there so that if it's too great, it won't take the trade out at all. You can put in the stop loss, the take profit. You can put in a comment. So you'll see, like with cost averager and trend trader and that, in the comment section of each trade, it'll just tell you that it's a trend trader trade or a cost averager trade. Magic number. So a magic number is just a generic number, it can be anything, that allows the software, it's attached to every trade so that the software can recognize that that's a trade that the software has taken out. as opposed to a manual trade or a trade from a different EA. So you'll see in a lot of EAs, Future FX ones included, in the user inputs, you can change the magic number. Generally, you can change the magic number. It won't affect how the software works at all. It's just there so that the software knows its own trades from others. And you can put in an expiration time. So if it was a limit order, you might have an expiration time. So if it doesn't actually take that trade out in the next hour, then it's going to cancel that limit order. And you can have it place an arrow wherever it trades, and you can change the color of it and everything. And so getting back to here, the first thing we wanted to put in was a symbol. And if you just want the current chart symbol, you can just do underscore symbol. Can't type, can't spell. And as you see, so if it's spelt wrong, it's not highlighted, it's not purple. So you know that's not doing what you want. Fix the typo up and you can see that it's correct now. So each parameter that you add into it, you just want to separate by a comma. So we put in the symbol. If we go back to the help file, we can see that symbol for trading, operation type, what we want it to be. And there's a whole heap. There's, as I said, there's limit orders, buy stop orders, buys, sells, all of that. If we have a look at trade operation, if we click on that to get more information, these are the different options. So this is what you'd want to type in. If you wanted to place a buy order, you'd have to do OP_buy. And likewise for the rest of them. So we can just copy it straight from there if we wanted to. So this help file, it can save you time, so you can copy and paste as well, or if you just can't quite remember how to do it, you can come back to there anytime you want. So we're going to want it to place a buy order, comma. What was the next one we needed to add? So that was the operation type, the number of lots. So 0.1 lots, 0.1, 1, doesn't matter, whatever size trade you want it to be, you type that in there. Order price. I'll just type in ask. And a lot of this code is case sensitive as well. So if I was to type in ask with a lowercase a, it's not highlighting, so it's not correct. And little typos like that, forgetting to put the commas in, that'll, unless you're a lot more competent than me, when you go to compile it, you'll get a lot of errors, and it'll simply be because you've got a lowercase instead of uppercase, you've missed a comma, things like that. And the next little bit of info, you don't have to put all of these in all the time, depending on the type of trade. So we've got slippage, stop loss, take profit. So slippage, that'll be in points. So if it moves more than 3 points, I quite often use 3. I mean, I've never really seen a big issue with it. But that's something you could play with, of course. And stop loss, if you don't want to place a stop loss, you just put a 0. Same with take profit. Now, we'll just leave it at that, and we'll just try and compile it, and we'll get some errors, just so I can show you how that works out. Now, one of the issues is that I didn't put a semicolon. Most lines of code need to end with a semicolon to let it know that's the case. And then if we compile it, you'll see there's no errors now. There's a warning. These are warnings. Warnings generally aren't something you have to worry about. This particular one here is saying that we've placed an order, but we don't have any code to check to make sure it actually got placed. And I'll go through the code that we use to check that. It's also pretty basic. But if you have a look, we've put in the symbol, buy, the lot size, the ask price, slippage, stop loss, and take profit. There are also a lot of others as well, like comments, the magic number, expiration, and the arrow. We just haven't added those at all. You don't have to add them, but those are other parameters that you can add. So once you compile it, if you come back to MT4 platform and refresh the code under expert advisors, now coding course, that was what I called this EA we're creating. I'll just open up a new chart window. Oh, that's going to be I'm not logged into a current trading account. It doesn't really matter for now anyway. I'll have that sorted for next time. But if we were to, right now, we've got no entry criteria. So we're just telling it to place a buy order. And remember the on tick function, it's running the code between these brackets every tick, every second, for example. So that means really that it's going to place a buy order of 0.1 lot size every tick. So if we were to run this code now, it would do exactly what we're telling it to. It would just place buy order, buy order, buy order, buy order over and over and over again. That's just because we don't have any entry criteria. But we'll go into extra code next lesson in order to, entry criteria. So one of the entry criteria that I quite often use is something like if there are currently 0 orders open, which is what you could do with this. The problem with this is that it would open up multiple trades, a silly amount. But you could put some code in there that says if there are 0 trades open, run this code. That way it would open 1 trade only, and then because there is no longer 0 trades open, it wouldn't open anymore. That would just be a quick way around that. But that's pretty much all I wanted to go through just for tonight, guys. I'll end up putting some information in the chat group as well. If you've got any questions that you think's worth sharing with people, put that in the chat group as well. If you've done some coding and you've got some good sources of coding knowledge, like some, different YouTube channels or whatever that you find really helpful, feel free to share them in the chat group as well so that we can all benefit. And then we'll also, I'll put some questions and things to think about in the chat group, but it'll be stuff like, we're going to learn a little bit more about code, but then we're also going to start actually creating an EA together. So start thinking now about what we might want this EA to do. I don't want to make it too technical for the start of the course, but we can start creating some code, start creating that EA. And as the course goes along and as we learn more, we'll refine that code and make it a little bit more technical and complex. And just as we move along. So we'll have a little bit of a think about, for now, the entry criteria. So at the moment, we've got it placing a trade. That's it. Let's start thinking about what sort of entry criteria we might want to have it do. So we might want to, whatever we might say, if RSI is under 20, we want it to place a buy order. That would be an entry criteria. So any of the indicators that come with the MT4 platform, there's very simple code to pull in that information as part of the EA as well. So, like if I wanted to find out the current RSI of the current market price, so right now, what is the current RSI value? It's just a simple, small one line of code that will pull that information in, and then we can use that how we wanted to. So, I guess we've all got our favorite little indicators and things that we use. We can pull them in very easily. All right, that's pretty much all I'll go through today, guys. As I said, just really an introduction to what we're going to get up to, and I don't want to keep the video zooms too long for those that are watching the replays and that. So, but I imagine most of the other ones I'll try and keep them all down to an hour, but sometimes they might drag on a little bit longer, especially once we start learning. We have lots of questions and answers, and you start asking questions I'm not sure of the answers to, and we've got to work it out together. They could go a bit longer. Anyway, guys, that's it. You got any questions or anything to finish off on about that? Speak up now, otherwise I'll stop the recording and we'll call it a night. We'll see how we go during the week. Cheers, Aaron. Cheers, Ben.
Cheers, mate. Catch us later, eh?
Not a problem, Des. I'll talk to you all later. I'll get this recording up. If I don't get it up tonight, it'll be first thing in the morning in the chat group, and just some information on whatever I can think of that sounds good, but questions and things for you to think about between now and the next Zoom call, which will be next Tuesday as well, same time next week. All right, have a good one, guys.